Hey everybody, welcome back to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 639, being recorded on July 28, 2021. I'm Sebastian Peak.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Brett Van Sprumberg, and good catch on the numbering because I forgot to change the show notes.
No, but I did.
No, you didn't. I'm fixing it right now.
It says Wednesday, July 28, podcast 639. Unless we're looking at different show notes.
We're looking at different show notes. I don't think we're looking.
No, I see your name popping up on my screen. So where did it?
I'm just going to start deleting everything. I'm going to delete everything.
You know what? That'll just make this more. This will make it more exciting, and we'll
I don't mind doing it as off the cuff. That's fine. We'll just do an hour.
That's fine.
Because we don't normally.
No. Yeah. The notes are
secret,
just general.
Jeremy, those are secrets.
Guys.
Maybe.
Am I saying the quiet part out loud again?
Maybe I didn't come down here until 9:55 p.m. And maybe as soon as I opened up VMix, we started streaming without even saying hello to each other.
That's actually true.
The readers don't.
That's actually true.
The listeners don't have to know that.
No.
We only speak to each other when we have to.
I try to speak to you guys and I try to interact, but everybody ignores me. Sometimes Jeremy responds, but only because we're both sysadmins, and he's like, "Did you see that exploit that we had to patch for, and Microsoft effed up the patch?" And I respond, "Yes."
Yeah. And then we both cry a bit.
By the way, you can go to pcper.com/subscribe to be alerted before live events like this podcast live recording session, ! And the next line says, you can help support the site and podcast distribution by heading over to patreon.com/pcper and becoming a patron. Let's move on to our most important segment of the week.
Absolutely.
This is going to be a Josh-heavy program, just to warn you.
It's burger time.
Yes. Well, we're going to start with that.
Oh, we're going to play the Burger Time game?
Which I didn't even have pulled up because I'm not prepared. I will show this first. Because I feel like I was misled this morning, this early afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Because I saw a status update from Josh.
Yeah.
Hold on. There it is. Where's the monitor? Right here.
Josh is quickly blocking you.
And I'm like, okay, whoa, wow.
Oh,
Josh has upped his photo game. Like, man, better lighting this week. Composition is pretty good. It's not centered, but it's okay. And I
like this. How did he get specular highlights off of ketchup?
I feel like it's just slightly overexposed.
It's not ketchup.
It's okay. It's okay. And then later, 3 hours later, you post something else. And he's like, somewhat the worse for wear.
Somewhat.
Let me pull this up. So I made a little
a meme
image out of this. Yes. 3 hours later, I get this picture.
I mean, it does kind of look like a cow pie on the top of it.
It's cow pie with worms, to be honest.
Yeah.
So what
the
happened?
lighting wasn't great. It just obviously didn't pop.
What happened between the photos? Was one just the picture from the online menu?
One was just I got it from Facebook that they posted.
Okay.
This is our special for today.
So they photoshopped it. They photoshopped it.
That is their one special burger of the day.
Yeah.
One singular.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But, the colors, I mean, sometimes my lighting is okay. And, it makes the burger kind of pop, especially if there's more colors to it. But this one is just olive drab.
It's flat.
Everything is
flat.
It's flat.
It's very flat.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but no, this is the granddaddy of them all, the Frontier Days Rodeo Burger. And it is comprised of 2 quarter-pound beef patties, so a half pound of beef, multiple onion rings, spicy barbecue sauce, fresh-cut jalapenos, American cheese, and finally, in there, they've actually got bacon.
Where?
So this is a massive.
I see some bacon there.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
It's bacon on purpose.
Two strips crossed, and this was a fantastic burger. I mean, the spicy barbecue sauce really lent itself to all the other components, and jalapenos gave it a nice bite and some crunch. Onion rings, come on, onion rings. They're fantastic and locally sourced, free range, grass-fed
Buns?
beef. Buns, I have no idea about, but there are two of them. Or one set of buns.
Yes.
Yeah, but no, this was a little squished. I'd kept it in the bag longer than I wanted to, but you know what it is. But boy, it was good. It was really good, and it's filling. I'm not going to have anything to eat until at least noon tomorrow, if not later, because it's a lot of food. I had a salad with it. I forewent the fries. My arteries just couldn't take it. I got a hammer out and I started tapping on my arm, and I just heard the sound of glass breaking. It's like, well, maybe I should rethink my diet.
Second quarter 2021 financials, AMD. Josh, what can you tell us?
Yeah. AMD essentially kicked ass.
Yes.
They had a record quarter. Not only just a record regular quarter, but a record Q2. And I mean, everything. $3.85 billion of revenue. That's insane. Let's compare to Q2 2015. Only 6 years ago, they had revenue of approximately $970 million and a loss of some $120 to $150 million. Not a great quarter. That was the 2 years before Ryzen.
So
And the next year, they
Bulldozer-
had slightly better with like $1 billion quarter with another significant loss. And even 2017, the first year, it was like $1.1 billion, and they had narrowed their losses. No, now they're up to $3.85 billion. They have followed NVIDIA up to hit nearly $4 billion a quarter. That's nuts. That's 100% growth essentially year over year. And another 12% from what was previously an extremely strong Q1, which followed an extremely strong Q4. I mean, they just kept making money. And this is a combination of execution on their part. They had a lot of years of a lot of leanness that they cut the fat out of the organization. And even they cut a lot of lean meat out of the organization, but they had to do it to survive. And so Lisa and gang have done very well in turning the ship around. And every part is just moving along great. Their computing and graphics segment, as you see here, $2.25 billion just by itself. That's CPUs and graphic processors. I mean, they sell everything they make. 3000 series to 5000 series, and now RDNA 2 stuff. Still, these are some of the most popular graphics cards around. You can buy a 6700 XT online for approximately $990. That's double, if not a little bit more, of the MSRP of that product. And if you're looking for a 6900 XT, you're looking $1,800 easy, 18 to 2000. It's insane, and they're selling everything that they can to these manufacturers who are then selling to you, and people are buying these products at these prices, and it blows my mind because it simply isn't worth it to me. But that's just me. I mean, I've got a pretty nice graphics card anyway, so obviously I'm not upgrading. People who may have a 1050 would want to upgrade, but they can't. And so that really stinks unless you go onto the Newegg Shuffle and you're willing to accept, bundle me up a power supply that's overpriced with this video card that's slightly overpriced, and then I can have that. But, in terms of what AMD has done is just absolutely amazing. I mean, double from last year. That's crazy. And last year was extremely strong for them because they were just actually still going with the 3000 series. They hadn't released the 5000. They haven't released RDNA 2. So it's interesting. But yeah, I mean, COVID and the market itself has helped them tremendously. But yeah, going from 1.9 billion to 3.8 billion in a year is nuts. We thought that NVIDIA's mercurial rise quarter to quarter over the past couple of years was nuts. This is right up there. Now, Intel has obviously been improving their quarterly numbers, but not to this extent. I mean, they're still making 19 billion a year with a quarter, which is, nuts, but they've got the manufacturing and they're taking advantage of the demand that the market is showing, and they still, they're only doing CPUs. Their GPU stuff is very basic. They still really haven't gotten into a lot of their accelerator market. They're doing a lot of networking, obviously, but that's a very small portion. Networking chipsets, it's not much as compared to the monster CPU products, and they want to diversify that, which is why they brought on Raj in the gang. Epic has been growing also tremendously. It's like 20% of their revenue, and that's a pretty significant chunk, especially where they were just 3 to 4 years ago. I mean, which was essentially nothing. Their first Epic processors were not great. Second generation had improvements, but this generation, the third stuff, is really, it is propelling them upwards and onwards at a tremendous rate. And they're growing, and they're taking percentages from Intel in the server market. It's nuts. We haven't seen AMD like this since like 2004, 2005, before Intel released the Core 2 based products. They're selling everything that they can make. 7 nanometers going full bore for TSMC. They're still relying on Global Foundries for their I/O stuff. That's a solid relationship, even though the rumors of Intel buying Global Foundries. Trying to think what else. Yeah, it's just been a fantastic year for AMD. I mean, it is a transformational year. Q3 will not be that significant in terms of growth. It's still going to be decent. We're looking at 150 million to 300 million increase in overall revenues. So going from 3.85 billion to 4.1 billion at the max. They're still selling everything that they can. TSMC is giving them more wafers where, it makes sense. And they're expecting 5 nanometer parts in 2022. They didn't really specify what time of year, but we're looking at the first half for Zen 4 as well as RDNA 3.
Yeah. They tripled profits. I mean, what else do you need to know?
710 million in net revenue, which is, I mean, they're getting close to $1 billion. That's pretty it's pretty good for AMD. That's some good living. Their free cash flow was a record for their entire existence. It was just kind of nuts, which good for AMD, good for competition. They're keeping everything going, and they keep executing. Their overall plan for the company is extremely healthy, and certainly they have profited from not only COVID, which has for some reason got people buying more and more computers, but also the faltering that Intel has had over the past couple of years, and they have taken supreme advantage of that, and especially the new Ryzen 5000 series. They
and
just,
Epic.
kind of, yeah, well, I mean, Epic is 3000 series, I believe, so far. I mean, they're
True, but it's making them
next.
stupid money.
Yeah, because
And they're big in workstation now, of course, because why wouldn't they be with Threadripper?
You've got a tremendous amount of cores and threads going at any kind of problem, and Intel has nothing to compete with that kind of compute density and power density, because
that's it.
Intel
That's
10
the big
series
deal.
and 11 series, I mean, they eat the juice and they produce the heat, and AMD doesn't have that issue. I mean, 65
think a lot
watts
of
is pretty
people-
much 65 watts.
A lot of people don't remember that from a data center perspective, it's really, really important for them to manage their power draw and their heat.
Good God.
When they're deploying so many of these, it really makes a huge difference. I mean, a lot of people at home are like, so what? I'll just cool it a little bit more. Or you know what? That's going to cost me $12 a year in extra electricity. That's not the case in the data center. It's a big, big deal.
No, in the data center, your upfront cost is actually the small one.
Yeah.
That forklift upgrade actually ends up being cheaper than what you look at in energy bills over the course of a year.
Yeah.
Or especially the lifetime of whatever you bought. Then it gets even better.
And it's in power, input and cooling on the output side. So they get it coming and going.
Yeah, it's and they've got very efficient processors as compared. And certainly Intel is starting to catch up a bit. But they're still hurting in that power draw and heat production. And
how can you say that, Josh? Did you not look at the Process and Packaging Innovations press kit?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. If we're done talking about AMD financials, Josh, are we done? You want to
Anybody else have anything else? I mean, other than growth looks to have slowed down, but they keep growing at a reasonable percentage rate. Their margins jumped up 4%, so I think they're at 48%. And when you consider ASPs have been rising, and they have a really good product mix, and the thing that's really kind of pulling them down is the semi-custom stuff, because in terms of margins, that's really, really low margin. But I think what's OpEx and some other things, it's really high, because all it is they did the work, they got paid for the work, they get the royalties from when they get manufacturing, and it is a long-term deal that continues to make them money year after year after year after all of the work has been done. And so in terms of that, their console wins are great. I'm going to be interested to see how the Steam handheld does, because that's based on semi-custom AMD silicon. The only thing they don't have is the Wii, for one reason or another, but that's fine with them, I guess. I mean, NVIDIA can have that chunk, and
the Switch.
I think
Okay.
Oh, the Switch. Sorry,
They had the Wii
I'm
U,
going back
but they don't have
the
the
Wii
Switch.
U.
Yeah, because they've been able to execute like they have been. It wouldn't doubt me that I would not doubt. Excuse me. That other customers are looking at AMD and investing in their semi-custom group to produce ASICs that are based on cutting-edge Zen technology, as well as our DNA 2 and eventually 3. And these all have proven to perform very well and to sell very well across the board in today's pretty hot marketplace. So yeah, AMD is sitting in the catbird seat. They're doing well as a company. They don't seem to be doing many things wrong. They continue to execute, and they've got a pretty good roadmap. The thing that they're going to be limited on is they still are not their own foundry. And so if TSMC and Samsung and Global Foundries, hit the brakes, they're at that mercy. But so far, all those guys have seen to be moving forward, and especially TSMC. And we're going to go into compare contrast with TSMC and Intel here pretty shortly. Anything else you guys have to add?
No, we're moving on.
Only that we'll get to MCM GPUs next week sometime, maybe.
Okay.
Rumors.
Intel had an event.
I want to look at the names. I love the
Process
names.
Technology Innovations. Look at all these innovations. 90 nanometer, 45 high K metal gate. That was a big one. FinFET. Now,
Intel Kumquat.
well, we're
Right.
moving into the angstrom era. That's what they're trying to
This
explain.
isn't proportional, by
But
the way.
we have
It's not-
rebranded.
No more nanometer.
We are now rebranding, apparently. Intel is now rebranding nanometers, because the next process, which will be enhanced FinFET, which I presume will still be 10 nanometer, is going to be called Intel 7. Just Intel 7. And then EUV
The process formerly known as 10 plus 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 plus.
will be Intel 4, and then it will move to Intel 3, and then it will move into the angstrom era with Intel 20A. What do you think about this from Intel's accelerated webcast?
They were all marketing terms anyway.
Yeah, it's
Essentially,
not wrong.
no matter, I mean,
Correct.
Intel's kind of complained about it. It's like, well, we're more, accurate with going at 10 nanometer and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, they really kind of weren't. And TSMC is not accurate and Samsung's not accurate. And that's just the way it goes. So I'm not opposed to rebranding a process node because for most consumers they don't care about process node. They just care about the price of the product and its overall performance. And so these node things don't make a whole lot of difference. But when you're talking to tech press and some enthusiasts and those who really pay attention, they're all kind of shrugging as well. It's like, yeah, we were tired of 14 nanometer plus 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 plus, and so if you can just label them as 7, 4, 20A, we don't care. They have examples of wafers with a lot of these technologies going forward, and so that's good, but that is not a promise of being able to deliver. What is that thing that they do before every quarter? Past performance does not indicate future performance, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the same thing.
Stocks,
I mean,
Josh.
they're showing that they can do the work, but we don't know how manufacturable it is or how economical it will be. TSMC does not have the billions that Intel does, and so they take a more conservative approach to their next generation nodes. And in this case, their more conservative approach at 7 nanometer, has paid off in spades for the company. They're doing the same thing with 5 nanometer, and it already is, Apple is in it big, AMD is about to be in it big, NVIDIA is transferring their stuff over to TSMC 5 nanometer. And so, Intel's nodes, their process technology is being aggressive. But again, we don't know how well that's going to be. Gelsinger's only been in here for a short amount of time. A lot of this stuff was already in the pipeline and development. And they've obviously probably changed things around. They've spent some money at certain areas that maybe they didn't before. And perhaps they even, pulled back some of the advanced features that they were going to introduce sooner to try to get, a bigger jump on the competition. But that bigger jump is a lot more risky than, perhaps what they're doing now. Still, it's going to be a while before we see the advantages potentially of these jumps for Intel, because TSMC's keeping close in there. AMD is doing well in terms of design. NVIDIA, again, excellent at design of their products. ARM, their designs are fantastic as well and very focused. So all these guys are providing a tremendous amount of competition for Intel. And they have a tough road to climb, a tough road to hoe, if you will. Is that the same? Anyway, tough road to hoe. So yeah, they're kind of behind the 8 ball in terms of everybody else in the industry. But the one advantage that they have more manufacturing than anybody else. So they can provide as many CPUs as really the market needs. And even they said that we're going to have shortages over the next 6 to 8 months. So that just kind of tells you where the market's at. And AMD has been actually taking some market share, especially in EPYC.
Yes.
So this next year is going to be really interesting to see where Intel goes. Their 11 series, yes, you've got those IPC advantages that they built in, but again, power draw and heat production is so far above what AMD has for kind of that same performance mark in the 5000 series. It's going to be interesting to see. Again, the GPUs from Intel, they should be showing up later this year, I believe.
There she comes.
And we have no idea how much they can provide and how efficient it'll be as compared to even current stuff. much less the upcoming 5 nanometer things from AMD and NVIDIA next year.
I just think if it's just a number, if it makes sense to be more honest and forthcoming about your actual lithography, and that their 10 was closer to 10 and maybe TSMC's is closer to like 8 or 9, my just the layman's perspective is, well, then why is it taking twice as much power to match the performance then if they're the same? It's the efficiency of TSMC 7 nanometer with AMD's architecture is so much greater that
design is, I mean, we're talking billions of transistors, and design is a big part of it too. And yeah, I mean, if you have weakness in your process node that you have chosen and you're going with, then it doesn't matter what your design does. There are going to be negative impacts to overall performance. And you can design around some of these things, but it can only go so far. And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Intel does with their process technology. If they just take a step back, it's like, you know what, we've been going down the wrong pathway. We need to make some major changes and go back here. And but doing that is it's going to take years. I mean, it's they're building a road brick by brick, and it all leads from one place to another. And if you go back, then you're laying down a lot of foundation that you didn't have to do. So it's process technology. It's just magic. I mean, how it works it's beyond me. I mean, how they're able to, in these very fine, small features, being able to deposit metal and then deposit, substrate and etch, and it really is. It's magical. I don't know how they do it, but they do.
And I hope they baked in some mitigations, because it's really going to suck if we have to go through a whole new batch of these.
There's been some noise the last couple of days about energy efficiency rules, and certain states apparently not even able to ship high performance PCs.
Well, at this point, one specific one, but that will change.
Is it just Dell?
Yeah, it's their Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition R10 gaming desktop.
Why the Ryzen Edition?
Well, because it's got more cores.
Just too power hungry.
Which is, interesting, because the Intel equivalent would be, scary.
Yeah,
I would say
it's not just more cores. It has to do with the amount of current draw that the motherboard that the CPU is placed in, and the power supply that it comes with, and
the power draw during the C states.
Exactly, but believe it or not, some of the larger motherboards fall into an exempt category. It doesn't exactly make sense. Oh, Jeremy, so go ahead.
Well, of course it does, because consumers don't buy those ones. Because almost all of this applies to consumers, which, is the number one driver of climate change. I mean, the laptops, desktops, and workstations make up a whole 3% of residential energy use in California, which is where this came from.
The real problem with energy use in relation to computer hardware is mining. It's not somebody buying a Dell system to game on.
And leaving it on overnight. I mean, for God's sake.
You left that system on. And
at which point it idles and doesn't draw any damn frickin' power, more or less. The entire system
was drawing a total of about 20 watts. Unacceptable.
So, I mean...
How many digital clocks do you have on over your house?
I mean, at least someone's doing something. I mean, that part of it is good, but it's the whole, we have to do something, this is something, therefore we have to do this part of it, which drives me frickin' batty. Because their calculations...
politicians don't have a good grasp on the nuances...
On reality?
Of the technologies of compute.
Josh, I just stop it. They don't have a good grasp on reality.
They have their own... We've got to change it.
You don't own a PC. You just borrow one. You're part of a PC share program. And that way it's divvied up between everyone that uses it. So yeah, the calculations, and they're quite interesting. Like they definitely had someone who knew what they were doing calculating it, because the power draw of your graphics card, there is a calculation that's added to the total expected draw of a system, and they set certain assumptions on how long it's going to spend in deep sleep, awake but unused, or under a load. Except there's only 100% load, or essentially no load. So for the vast majority of computer usage, this is not applicable in any way, shape, or form. But at the same time, they're ignoring the miners, which are doing the big thing, because they are screaming and yelling about keeping it below 135 kilowatt hours a year. I think that's what it was. That's sort of what they're aiming for right now. So there's a site which keeps its track on Bitcoin electricity out of Cambridge, the university thereof. It's only Bitcoin. So currently, today, Bitcoin has used 10.35 gigawatt hours in the past 24 hours. The annualized consumption at this point is 71.86 terawatt hours per year. When
Do you know
look
how many
back in
times
May,
that would have sent Marty McFly back into the past?
like, we're beyond gigahertz. Yeah, so this is a pet peeve of mine, because it's like, no, go after, like, if you can go after a pot growing operation off of the amount of electricity it's sucking down, like, you can do the same damn thing for miners and leave the poor gamers alone.
This is not the problem. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, but if you're running a 3090 full out mining, or playing a certain Amazon game, then yeah.
On that note, we should pause to hear from this week's podcast sponsor.
Say goodbye to repetitive text entry spelling and messaging errors, or sometimes even trying to remember the right thing to say. TextExpander makes it easy to give your team the right words for every situation. Whether you need to keep your team happy or delight customers with effective answers, you can rest easy knowing your team has got it covered by getting it right every time. Now with improved web app security to keep your content well protected, TextExpander helps keep your team consistent, accurate, and current. With it, you can share your text and images with the whole staff to keep them on track. Everyone will share the same messaging, so they can give the same answers to all your customers' questions, using TextExpander's powerful shortcuts and abbreviations so that you can streamline and speed up everything you type. Now that's increasing productivity. Create powerful snippets to save you time, so that all you type is a short abbreviation, and TextExpander does the rest of the typing for you. Using TextExpander, you can say the right thing in just a few keystrokes. TextExpander is available on Mac, Windows, Chrome, iPhone, and iPad. Show listeners can get 20% off their first year, so visit textexpander.com/podcast to learn more. That's textexpander.com/podcast.
We're back, and we're about to explore another article from the Register, because that's kind of what we do. And this is interesting. Plastic, fantastic. Will it bend?
Will it bend?
Plastic back TFT part position as perfect for the Internet of Things. Well, I don't care about that part. I care about the part that they're building chips on flexible plastic. PlasticARM, it's called.
Yep. Because why wouldn't you call it? And then Flex Logic is the substrate they're putting it on. So it's. I mean, you're not wrapping this around into a circle. I mean, it's flexible, but not all that malleable. And I mean, the thing about that is that means distances are going to change. So the process node is one you haven't seen in a while. Like, say, the X486 era. It's on 800 nanometer.
Oh
yeah.
Okay.
So this is
producing that anymore.
I would assume of any of us, you would know that.
That was 100 millimeter wafers that.
Yeah, they were.
That was probably done on.
Wow.
It's a wafer that is this big.
They
You know
need
how many
the
chips you
distance.
can put on there?
It doesn't flex.
How
You
many
gotta
that
have
work?
distance.
Maybe 5.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Doped, exactly. It's doped plastic.
Yeah.
It's not even really a substrate.
But at the same time, the architecture is relatively new. It's the Cortex M0 Plus. It just embiggened. It's also slowed down a little bit. If you might recall with the
a little.
well, yeah,
Yeah, the traces
it's
are
gone
this
from
long.
You
130 megahertz to 20 kilohertz.
Yeah. Because here's the thing about plastic: it melts. Silicon,
Yeah, there's that.
you gotta heat it up pretty high, and so you are limited in what you can do with that kind of substrate. But it's an interesting it's an interesting advancement, and it will open up some other areas for it, I'm sure. But it's going to be limited, and it's certainly not going to be competitive in terms of density and performance as to current silicon-based wafers and technology. But it's,
Did you say it was kilohertz? It ran at a kilohertz rate, not
20 kilohertz.
wow.
So that's like the FPGA,
0.02.
the FPGA machines that they test GPUs on, the flows. Yeah, that's how fast it goes.
That brings us to the other point. It's not actually an FPGA. It's currently a ROM right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's etched in what it does. But hell, if you wanted to put sensors on somebody or in their clothing, this is your thing.
Okay. But just to give people a reference rate here, we originally, home computers, back in way long ago, you used to hook them to your television, and they used to run at a rate of like 4.77 megahertz. And the reason it did that, it was the same frequency rate as the color burst signal of the clock rate that was coming out of your freaking television. Megahertz. The dawn of computers ran at 4 megahertz or 4.77 megahertz. This is a kilohertz rate, just to kind of set the stage as to how fast these things really aren't.
Like when orders of
a little bit
slower.
A little bit slower.
Within
like
the audible range of switching.
Yeah, click.
It's like, what is that sound? Oh, it's my processor.
Yes, it's got
Like a
actual
hard drive.
relays.
Boy, what did a 404? Okay, a 4004 Intel processor ran at 740 to 750 kilohertz.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
And that's back in 1968?
Yeah, it's got to set the Wayback Machine. I was talking about computers from the 80s.
Jeremy, I'm not sure what to make of the name of this game. Chernobylite.
Light.
Does that mean
Light.
it was less tragic? What is this?
No, not really. It's more like it's a mineral that's only found in this game
Okay.
in and around the reactor of Chernobyl. So this is a Kickstarter I backed a long time ago. The reason that I backed it was because this bunch of lunatics went to the exclusion zone. They got permission to do it with drones and laser rangers and a bunch of other stuff. Think the Ridley Scott movie before Aliens, where they go in and they map the inside of the spaceship. They did that in freaking Chernobyl. So a lot of this, there's a limited number of maps that you're using in this, but they're literal captures of the surrounding areas and environs of Chernobyl. So I thought, that's kind of neat, and you guys are absolutely insane. So yeah, I'll throw a little bit of money at you. It's the Farm 51 is what they're called, and they're, as you might expect, from around that area. So it's been probably 4 years now in development. I think it was supposed to come out in 2019 or so, and the early access for the backers did, but it's finally fully released. And so it's an odd game in that it's sort of roguelike in that, yes, there's a limited number of maps that you can go to, but each time you go, they're a little bit different in the people that you're going to run into, or whether or not there's a bunch of military that doesn't want you there or not. And there's some base building that you can only do certain things if you find other certain things. So from that end, it does sound like a lot of other things that have happened recently, but the focus isn't so much on that. It's not the horror. It's not the, oh God, we got to find a deer, we're all dead and the game's over. It's part of the game, but it's not the main part of the game. The main part is that a lot of the NPCs are motion captured people in Hollywood makeup and gear. And so, you're actually more focused on the storytelling, on trying to put together the story of what the hell has happened as you're searching for your wife that disappeared 30 years ago during the original accident, and to figure out what happened to her, with a little bit of horror and strangeness. And I mean, Chernobylite doesn't actually really exist. Well, actually, kind of does, but not really. There was a certain element they found within the reactor, but it's not brand new element. It's just, it's an new isotope.
It's
So
corium.
there's some fantasy.
Corium is what
Yeah.
you're talking about, and it only exists in a melted down reactor, and it's just
That's
a
the one.
mixture of everything: silicon,
Yeah,
carbon,
flash.
fissile material, corium.
Yeah,
Jeremy,
so
this
they
looks
sort of went.
outstanding. I would have
It's
thrown money
fun.
at it if I'd known it existed.
Well, it's only like $20 on Steam, I think.
I
know that it's
going
out.
in.
Yeah. One thing, if you are planning to go in shooting and fighting, well, actually, you're a research scientist, and the gameplay is like that. Yeah, you have a pistol, but if you get in a gunfight with anyone short of an old lady who isn't able to see, you're going to die. You will be outshot because they know how to uke. And no, there's no iron sights. You're literally a dude that's fired a gun a couple of times at the range, and so yeah, good luck.
Real quick, I did a news post on this actually. A new cooler from Be Quiet. So it's the Dark Rock TF2, and TF stands for Top Flow. They're claiming 230 watts
That's a lot.
for this rather compact cooler. I mean, it's big. It has two 135 millimeter fans. It's one of those kind of folded over designs, but it only stands 134 millimeters tall. So if you are in a situation where you need either a shorter cooler or you want top flow, because of course that also cools the VRMs and things a little bit, the components around the CPU, then this could be an interesting option. It's got 6 millimeter heat pipes along with those fans, a Silent Wings 3 with a funnel shape. Interesting. And then a Silent Wings 135 virtually inaudible operation. Special black coating with ceramic particles to enable perfect heat
We
transfer.
got that black body radiation going on.
Look at this picture here. This is a big, beefy cooler. Imagine putting one of these on your overclocked AMD DX4 back in the day. Think about it. Get it up to 133 megahertz, whatever people did, 140. Anyway, it's going to be about $85. They do kind of unusual prices for the U.S. $85.90 is the official
I think
list
they're
price.
doing a sort of Euro to US conversion,
Yeah.
and they just do it straight across.
Yep, and it goes on sale August 10. And finally, we'll wrap up.
Maybe
the
not
news.
everybody knew that Be Quiet is essentially European or German, so
Yeah, they're German.
that's kind of why that
designed in quality control in Germany. Okay, what is Lemonduck? I read this as Lemonduck. It's actually Lemonduck. Jeremy.
That
lemon
it
dust.
could have gone worse.
Party.
It's not a party at all.
What is it? It's malware.
So
Okay.
yeah. Well, originally it was one of the original dump a miner on your machine and leave, and just have you mining away that you had no idea that you were doing it. And its one sort of claim to fame was that it was pretty good at getting through things, and it will get Windows and it will get Linux too. It don't care. It will do both of them. But it's been evolving to the point where it forked, and now there's also Lemon Cat. They're named for a variable in the code. And so the newer ones, the good news is it will now hunt down and kill malware on your machine. So that it isn't having to share any processes with any other bloody malware. So that's the sort of level of programming we're talking about behind this damn thing. But at the same time, it's now expanded to be able to sit and give itself permissions through just about any of the current vulnerabilities that are out there for your OS or your CPU, and gather up credentials. It'll screw around and disable UAC without you knowing it. It will then put a flag that it's still running so that Windows doesn't panic, but it's not actually running. And, a variety of things. It does just about every bloody thing that you hear various pieces of malware do. It's just all in one package. And yeah, it's out there. We know a lot about it, but a lot of the command and control are being hosted on platforms that don't really care. like literally to the point of you really need to be taken out back and executed for the crimes that are committing. You can't extradite us from here, so we're going to keep it up. So they can't shut down the command and control, and they can move around the few times that they manage to block out a bunch of IPs. So it's just been evolving since 2019. It gets worse every single time. Microsoft just put a blog up to depress anyone who doesn't actually aware of this. And then the second one, they're going to go through some steps to try and defend against it. But it's definitely an arms race where, some of these tips will get rid of some of the holes, but at the same time it won't. And one of them is going to literally be disable hyperthreading.
Oh, again?
Always
See, Soren comes up with a better picture right there.
It's always the answer.
That's the one. Yep, he did
Let me
it.
check.
I was super impressed by the fact that it actually goes in and removes the other malware from your system.
Yeah, that was the part that caught me. I'm like, seriously? You're at that point now?
It's like anti-malware.
It's like a super antivirus with a payload.
Yeah, it's sort of like McAfee, isn't it? In that way?
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, no, because that'll run right alongside all the other bloated antiviruses that you have running in expired.
Hey, look,
You have a point. Yeah, sure.
I was looking for a herpes C thing to tie into this, and I decided maybe I shouldn't put that on the front page.
Quickly, a couple minutes each on these. There's a couple of reviews on the site this week you can check out, and I urge you to do so I don't have to drone on and on the podcast here. We looked at a MAINGEAR VYBE. This is their base model gaming system. I will just show you a screenshot here that I took when I wrote this. And the Vibe starts at $1,699, so a $1,700 PC, which I don't know if this is still the case, but it was shipping with a 3060 Ti, a Ryzen 5 5600X, 16 gigs of 3600 RAM, and an SSD, a 512 Intel 660p, and a 1 terabyte hard drive. That's not bad for $1,700 for a pre-built. Especially considering you cannot buy a 3060 Ti anywhere at all, unless it's third-party markup or scalper. So,
hey, what do you think about that solid front panel, though?
That's okay. Thank you for stealing my thunder here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
That's the system. It looks nice, but yes, as Brett alluded to, it has a solid plastic front panel, nice tempered glass side. It's just kind of your average case. That was the thing. The case was the letdown here. The components were nice. The build was nice, but this right here, these little vents are only on one side of the front panel. And that's it. So whatever kind of airflow you can get from that to feed this 240 millimeter liquid cooler, which of course this has a Founders Edition card of the RTX 3080 Persuasion. And that means that there is a fan right here blowing hot air up into the CPU cooler. So that gets saturated a lot faster than it would otherwise. And you have these two intake fans which aren't really getting any air. So needless to say, and, the build, I'll show this picture of the back. It's very tidy. They did a nice job of cinching up everything using zip ties, and it's all very tight and everything. It's not on
You got a fan bus.
Yes, you do. But it's not on the level of the Falcon Northwest I looked at last year, honestly. It's okay. It looks like a really tidy
but the pricing
build.
But the pricing difference, doesn't it warrant that difference? This
particular build was a total cost of $4,330 the way they configured it and sent it to us. Our loaner, they took that $1,700 system and they upgraded it all the way to $4,330. So I feel like for Vibe, which is their budget line, it makes no sense to configure a $4,300 Vibe when they have so much in the $4,000 range that's way more impressive, even if you don't get quite the level of like a 3080 and a 5950X. Still,
you might want to order this if you're in California.
Right. Anyway, the Talon, I did a comparison just out of curiosity. A Talon would have been $4687 with this configuration, so $350 more. But then the Talon has a bigger all-in-one liquid cooler. It has a longer warranty. It has Windows Pro instead of the home license. So when I reconfigured to match, we were talking $4439 for the Vibe versus $4687, so $250. But the case alone on the Talon is probably worth the difference, in my opinion. Anyway, you're getting all off-the-shelf components. I pointed out here. It's an Asus ROG Crosshair 8 Hero Wi-Fi motherboard. But here's the problem. And I had to change the scale, the axis a lot here. So this is not as big as it looks. But there is a significant difference between not temperatures. I wasn't even worried about that. I was getting lower benchmark results with the front panel on versus off. It was literally this system scaled with airflow. Performance scaled with airflow. Where my initial graphics score for, let's see, the Cinebench all-core, 9,598 points. That's a short test with a 16-core CPU. But it was already heating up. And I took off the front panel. It goes up to 9,840. That's 242 points gained. And this is an average. Like I ran it multiple times, and I was getting consistently 9,840. And then I took all the panels off. And maybe that was with all panels off. I don't know. Anyway, it scaled up. Let's see. I don't even know what I'm saying. It scaled up significantly. It went up 75 points. I misstated that. It went up 75 points by taking off the front panel. It went up 242 points taking the front and side panel off, so that the cooler got even more airflow. So if this was just a high airflow case, it would have been fine. The first thing I would do if I bought this system would be to put it in a different case. I'd only buy it for the components. I would not buy it for the case. I don't like the case.
Wow.
So they have all, and here's the example. They have all these other systems at Main Gear. The Vibe is the cheapest system. You can move up to the R1, which starts at $2187. You move up to the Turbo. There are some that are different form factors. Like the F131 is this skinnier case, but Rush is, of course, their big flagship. And you can even, I priced out a F131 with a custom loop. Starts at $4,092. So
does it come with an optical drive?
No. My point is, if you have
solid front,
quoting the article, if you have $4,300 plus to spend on a PC, spend $5,000 and get one with a fancy custom cooling. The end. That's the end of my review. It's nice, but it doesn't make any sense to upgrade a Vibe this far. Keep the Vibe for the entry-level builds with the Ryzen 5s, Ryzen 7s, and a mid-range GPU, and then move up to the F131 or the Rush or something if you want a higher end. If you want to spend $4,000 on a build, get the really cool-looking hardline liquid cooling build. You'll regret it if you don't.
One of those cases looked a lot like the Lee and Lee 011.
Sure. Yeah. I'll spend 1 minute on this. Just so you know it exists. Lexar, professional. I looked at some SDXC, like high-speed storage last year from Samsung, the Pro Plus, Evo Plus. And I compared it to my old SanDisk Extreme, which was more expensive and continues to be more expensive, but is faster now. And here are my basic results. We're talking, they're hitting their advertised numbers. This is advertised as 160 megabyte per second read, and it does 159.61 at QDepth1 single thread, and it's rated for 120 megabytes per second writes. It was doing just over that, so no problems there. If you look at it compared to the Samsung Pro Plus that I reviewed last year, it's night and day. And even the random performance is better until you get to writes. Random writes were slightly lower, but not much. But it's just a different class of, it's just ridiculously fast storage for the price. And here are other prices. The 128 gigabyte card that I reviewed is currently $27.99 on Amazon. That is still more expensive than Samsung's Pro, but it's less expensive than the SanDisk Extreme stuff. So I think it's a really good price-performance mix. And I use a lot of SDXC storage, and I gave it the editor's choice just because the price performance is so good on these. I have no idea what the longevity is because I only used it for a few weeks, but
I can't believe this is so inexpensive. That's quite a deal, actually.
yeah, they've dropped a lot. I mean, they've not a lot, but they've dropped a fair amount since they launched. But if you look at the stuff that's in the kind of like the price range of about $25 for a 128 gigabyte card, it's typically stuff that's up to 100 megabytes per second. And this is 160 for just a couple dollars more.
Yeah, I think that's 25% faster than I was buying 128 a couple years ago. Actually, like 18 months ago.
I like the dongle too.
Remember when we were buying 128 megabyte cards?
Yeah, remember the form factor was not so small. It was much bigger.
My first USB drive was 20 megabytes. But it was such a bargain as compared to that many 1.44
I
meg
was gonna say, yeah.
discs.
That many floppies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Picks of the week. And
Picks of the week.
Josh starts as usual.
Barodynamic headphones are getting less and less expensive. The DT770 80 ohm, almost $50 off. So you're going from 179 down to 125 with another. No, not that much. 134. So that's a very nice price for closed speakers. These are the 80 ohm ones. So you got to have a source that can push through.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, take care. But otherwise, comfortable design, sounds great. Not a whole lot of scratch.
80 ohms doesn't sound like a lot, but a lot of headphones are like 28 to 32, so you do need a little bit better headphone amplifier. Because it works the opposite of speakers. That was always confusing to me. Speakers, the lower.
Would you like me to get out and push that signal a little bit?
It'll just be really quiet. I mean, it just volume all the way up, and it'll just be not very
But your
loud.
signal to noise ratio.
Oh, it'll be sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, Jeremy,
Be quiet.
What?
Be quiet.
you have a pick.
I do?
You do.
I'm going to give you one. Here, talk about this.
Yeah, so the Nighthawk RAX20 Wi-Fi 6 router from Netgear with a Broadcom chipset in it, which means you're probably not going to see DDWRT on it, which kind of sucks a little bit. But
Damn it.
currently, it's running after you put in the promo code. It's a lovely $80.
How?
Normally,
How are they
it's
able
around
to do this?
$200. I honestly don't know because this is not an old product. This is one of Netgear's newer ones. It's not their higher end. It's got 4 streams. I think their high end has up to 16.
Okay.
But still, you've got 4 streams. It's going to be enough because how many Wi-Fi 6 devices are you attaching to it at this exact moment? So
None.
if you're just sort of looking for a semi-decent router to expand your network, it's got 4 physical ports on it. So it's also not that big because you can see the size of it compared to the ports. At $70 plus tax, that is just a ridiculously good deal. Use it to extend it into the backyard. I mean, it's cheap enough you don't really care if it gets rained on too much. So yeah, it's not a bad idea if you don't want to deal with mesh.
Yeah, you got a point there.
Because I found that unless you actually know what you're doing, meshes are not necessarily the best way to go.
I don't know. My Eero has been pretty bulletproof.
You know what you're doing.
Yeah, and that's top line. That's top
Even
line
people
gear.
who
That Eero.
Don't
And also-
know what they're doing. Eero is they've optimized it and they've made it
Nice.
not foolproof, but pretty damn close. And you pay for it, and there are some disadvantages to it, but overall, it's
All right, Brett, your pick is next.
I chose something that I'm not going to buy, but I would kind of like it if I could buy it, and I admire it because it exists.
Yes,
this is
I
the
saw this.
Samsung. This is the Samsung Neo G9. It goes on pre-order tomorrow. For God's sakes,
It's a very
people who can
oddly
afford
shaped
this-
screen. Oh, wait, there it is.
For God's sakes, people who can afford this, please get in line
It's only $2,500. It's not like it's
and lay
$10,000.
and lay down your $2,500.
It's not like
I'm
it's that
spending-
TV that Jeremy picked last week.
I'm probably not spending $2,500 a monitor, but if this technology does get down to where I can afford it, I would so jump on this because this is 240 megahertz refresh, 1 microsecond, 49 inches of curved, glorious display.
And you'd be a fool because you'd be buying first generation display technology.
I don't want to hear this. I'm going to.
It's going to be
I'd rather spend $100,000 on a roll-up one. I'm sorry.
because this is
I would buy
micro
this.
LED Gen 1.
It's Oh my gosh! Yes, you're right. I forgot to mention that it's also micro LED with
That's
think
the whole
over
point.
2,000 dimming area, local dimming areas
Well,
for
if
those sweet blacks.
Or just get an OLED display for $1,000 less and enjoy it.
You know, I don't want to. I'm not listening to you right now. That OLED display
$1,500 and you
can't
could buy
keep up.
yourself a 55-inch OLED.
Gigabyte 48-inch OLED.
Yeah, get that other
Uh,
one, the special
that
one that
sounds-
has like the VRR support or whatever.
That sounds like
Yeah.
an inch short and a dollar less.
But it's taller, and so you can't
Right.
handle taller.
You can the
I want
taller
that-
gives
I
you
want that
more
wide
space for
curved
activities.
display. I want that wide curved display.
all about the
49
aspect.
inches of glorious curved resolution and high refresh. 240 megahertz refresh. 1 microsecond.
Okay.
Yeah.
For my pick, I don't have one, but I saw for some reason, and I don't want to admit to actually having bought this on eBay, but I
Totally
I did.
not staged or anything.
No, it was just over on the next table. It's not staged, but it's ridiculous that I own this, but I do. It is the Palm Z22 handheld essentials
Still in
pack.
package.
Still in the box. Now, years ago, I bought one of these brand new at Circuit City for $99. And I use this thing every day. It comes with like 2 different silicon cases inside. It has like a bunch of extra crap in here. That's what this part is for, the essentials kit. But look at this device. It's isn't it kind of familiar looking? It's
Like a Zune?
It's got a rectangular touch display. It's got a home button
It's
centered
an
below it.
iPod.
Kind of like an iPhone. And this is what I had before my iPhone. So around
But
2000.
it was a Palm Pilot, so it was so much better.
Right. 2005, I bought one of these, and I used it until the iPhone launched in 2007. And then because I watched that presentation, I'm like, I must have this because it was a color screen. It got online. This thing, 160 by 160 pixels, I think was the actual screen resolution. It was, and it's kind of painful to think about going back and using it. I don't have mine anymore, but I could open this box, which is still sealed, and experience
gosh.
it all over again.
Oh.
You could.
Oh, but you
Could
won't.
you not?
Believe it
But
or
you
not,
won't.
somebody was letting this go for next to nothing. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, it's still sealed? I
It's only
$20?
$180.
I
How
have
much?
to.
I'm hard to believe.
All right, that's not a real pick, but the show is over. And if you tune in next week, you might be treated to yet another edition of the PC Perspective Podcast. Thanks for watching and or listening, and we'll talk to you guys in the near future.
Good night.
Night.